Hi, this is E.T. Common chatter among boxing aficionados revolves around who is the greatest fighter of all time. Controversy marred by our own biases concerning race, nationality, age, and so on. But putting biases aside, other problems arise when determining the greatest fighter. And one is misreading as synonymous the words great and best. Well, they're different things. Now, this man here is known as Alexander the Great, not Alexander the Best. In fact, he ranks far below best in terms of body counts and invading peoples who didn't first attack him than do these people here. Great assumes, in particular among boxing fans, not only ring success, but influence beyond the sport. So Rocky Marciano, who retired undefeated and a decade into retirement hurt a much younger Muhammad Ali during a filmed exhibition, cannot be considered great in the sense that Muhammad Ali is. Ali's influence went far beyond boxing. And the same can be said of other undefeated fighters like Floyd Mayweather, Joe Calzaghe, Steve Otke, as well as others who, though suffering an occasional defeat, completely dominated their respective weight divisions, men such as Sugar Ray Robinson and Sonny Liston. Nearly unbeatable? Yes, but great in the sense that Jack Johnson was, or Joe Louis, or Muhammad Ali? No. Well, let's forget about greatest and try to identify the best fighter. But again, problems come up. Do we, one, simply weigh the percentage of fights won without consideration of the quality of opponents? Do we, two, add preference to the old-time fighters who fought literally hundreds of bouts and had no access to performance-enhancing drugs? Do we, three, maybe judge a fighter only by his golden years prior to aging into his own shadow? Do we, four, use different standards for fighters who, after the early 60s, had access to dianabol and anabolic steroids of another sort, plus energy enhancers such as cocaine and also diuretics and who knows what else? And number 5, do we rate the fighters at one weight class but not a higher one? Okay, regarding percentage of victories, consider this. You see this man here. That is Lamar Clark. He fought out of Utah in the late 50s and early 60s. He won 40 straight victories, all by knockout or TKOs. But it was against a string of boxers with losing records or no previous fights at all. Then he lost by knockout to first, who was it? Bartolo Soni, then former Olympic champion Pete Rademacher, and finally a young Cassius Clay, later Muhammad Ali. If percentages alone were criterion of best, then Clark would rank above Roy Jones Jr., Sonny Liston, Sugar Ray Robinson. I can go on for an hour. And what about the old-timers? Let's look at Sam Langford, also known as the Boston Bone Crusher, the Boston Tar Baby, a whole bunch of names. Langford was, and is, considered the greatest fighter to never win a title. His career spanned almost a quarter of a century, and the number of his bouts was in the hundreds, from 1902 to 1926. He is ranked by BoxRec as the third greatest heavyweight of all time and the ninth greatest pound for pound. Langford fought as a lightweight all the way to heavyweight, and he was avoided by the top fighters of all those classes. Jack Dempsey was very open about it. I'm not going to go into the ring with Sam Langford. Langford was denied many opportunities because of a color line. That color line, by the way, was invoked against him by black champion Jack Johnson. Langford was robbed of many victories by being given a draw decision by biased judges when he was winning handily. But despite all of the handicaps, Langford maintained a mostly winning record well into old age when he was almost totally blind against the top fighters of his day. What I'm saying is different criteria should be used in determining the best fighter when we're talking about people like Langford who fought in a previous era. When they're put up against today's chemically enhanced boxers who usually retire after only a few dozen fights and don't jump from lightweight up to heavyweight, and who are no longer denied fights because of race bias, and they don't often encounter openly biased judging, although, as we know, it does happen today. Langford was, in my opinion, among the best ever, never to win a title, but was he the best? Who can say? Should we consider the best fighter by only his winning years? Well, consider Roy Jones Jr., Muhammad Ali, Nassim Hamed, Mike Tyson. These fighters had explosive power, speed, and a near inhuman dexterity, attributes that are the first to go. During their respective golden years, each one of these fighters showed near preternatural skills of punching power, maneuverability, and so on. But once these attributes departed, each lost that invincibility, and Nassim simply retired. And what do we do about these drug-enhanced fighters? Now, this is a touchy subject, and E.T.'s not going to tell you that he has any proof that any fighter is on steroids or energy enhancers or uses pre-weigh-in diuretics and so on. But it appears obvious that today's fighters, in fact, most competitive athletes, have physiques that suggest chemical enhancement. And the combination of these performance-enhancing drugs have to add to the strength and power and longevity of today's boxers, which makes determining who to rank the best among the pre- and post-performance-enhancing drug era nearly impossible. And finally, can we rate a fighter's career at one weight classification and ignore his performance at a higher one? Now, Gene Tunney fought over 80 bouts, and he lost only one very close decision to the great Harry Greb, who he beat later in subsequent bouts. And he fought at both light heavyweight and heavyweight, and he beat the best at both, including Jack Dempsey, twice. But Tunney is the exception to an almost fixed rule. Roy Jones Jr., despite outpointing John Ruiz at heavyweight, lost his magic when he dropped to light heavy to fight Antonio Tarver, and then he lost embarrassingly to Joe Calzaghe, and eventually Jones was unable to defeat much lower-ranked fighters. But Jones at middleweight, before he ballooned some 20 pounds, was undefeated, save for a disqualification, and I think, for a short time, was the most impressive fighter maybe ever. But which part of Jones's career do we rate? All of it, including the later years, or only those early years at middleweight? Another thing to consider when rating fighters: how far back do we go? Now, I went back to John L. Sullivan, recognized as the first champion, but we could go back to bare-knuckle days of Tom Molyneux or Tom Cribb, or we can look back millennia. We have record of an Olympic game in I forgot the year, 600 something BC. That was when Onomastos of Smyrna was said to have won the first boxing championship. So what is the point of all this? It is to show that determining the best fighter is well nigh impossible. And that is, in my opinion, a very good thing, because it allows us to go on and argue endlessly, often from a standpoint of our own biases, about who would win whatever particular bout. Would, for instance, a healthy James Jeffries have beaten Jack Johnson? Or would Sam Langford have knocked out James Toney, or would Toney have knocked out Langford? Would Tunney have survived a Joe Calzaghe, or whatever? We can go on. And it makes it fun. What do you think? Put in your comments below, type them in. Do subscribe to the channel and hit the like or dislike button. Thank you very much.